So Brie Bella has announced her retirement from in-ring performing and the wrestling, in-ring competition. Brie Bella's gone from wrestling, at least supposedly according to the Total Bella's segment. You know what? It's probably a long time coming, but it's probably a good thing that she's gone. It's probably a good thing that she's out of the business, at least out of in-ring action. And I think that's a good thing for just about everybody that you can name people like Liv Morgan, people that she's affected physically. That incident last year, that very infamous incident where she was basically blasted by all the fans. She was basically targeted by many different fans, and I think some of them were definitely right in criticizing her, and she was definitely somebody that should have been a lot more careful, should have been a lot more safer in her in-ring style, but I think it's an overall good thing. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the review space. In this video, I just saw this recent article here from, what is this, wrestling news from, I think it's, what is it, Pro Wrestling Sheet? Anyway, it's all over the internet right now. Brie Bella announces her retirement, says she's retired from WWE in-ring competition. So she's out of it, man. She's out of, I guess she's no longer competing. And she's been in the business for a long time. I want to say she's been in there since maybe 2007 as a developmental. As a matter of fact, I think I have an old copy of WWE Magazine from maybe around like '07, maybe early '08, early 2008, something like that featured her. It featured like a younger Sheamus and a couple of other young rookies in developmental. Back in the day, I don't know if it was it might have been OVW, but I'm not sure if FCW was a thing quite yet around that time, or maybe they were transitioning into FCW. But anyway, they were still in developmental. They weren't even on the main roster yet, And when Brie Bella and her sister Nikki, when they debuted on the main roster, I think it might have been on SmackDown, they were doing the switcheroo gimmick where it was basically twin magic. They would have one of the sisters, whether it's Nikki or Brie, and during the middle of the match they would switch, and basically they would refresh the character. It would be like, oh my god, she won somehow, she snuck a win, because now you have the tired sister. She would switch out from the other sister, and then the other sister would completely be able to win and sneak a win because she was a lot more fresh during the middle of the match. So that was kind of a cool little, cute little gimmick that they had at the beginning. And then over time, they kind of just lingered as a pseudo-valet, pseudo-duo tag team kind of thing, of a divas tag team back in the late 2000s. I remember their little segments and associations with other male tag teams, such as, I think it was John Morrison and The Miz. That was a thing, and they were feuding at the time against the Carlito and I think one of his cousins. It's like Primo and Carlito, the Colones, back in the day. They were competing for like the tag team championship or whatever, and this was around late 2000s era. So the Bellas were kind of associated with both groups, and so that was kind of an interesting phase for them. They were just kind of starting out on the main roster. They weren't really important factors yet, and eventually, like, I would hear certain things through the grapevine and through certain, pieces of news where I think it was either Nikki or Brie. It might have been Nikki that was dating Dolph Ziggler, or dating certain individuals on the roster. So again, not like huge news or anything like that. But then eventually, sometime in the 2010s, so I don't know if it was maybe about 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, it came out that she was dating, Nikki was dating John Cena, and Brie Bella was dating Daniel Bryan, who, obviously, especially with Daniel Bryan, I think they had segments with Daniel back in the day. I think it might have been on the NXT days when he was on NXT or something like that. I think she might have been, the Bella Twins might have been either his, I don't think there was his mentor, but there was definitely some segments in there. I don't know if it was such a long time ago, But I do remember that, the two of them hanging out with Daniel Bryan. And so you could kind of see those early signs of a relationship happening definitely between Daniel and Brie. But, so all these years that went by, and I think they tried to do some other things back in the day. The Bella Twins, they tried to branch off into other stuff outside of WWE. I think they briefly left in, I think it was around 2013-ish, late 2013, and then they came back maybe later that year or early 2014. I think they tried to do, it was either a movie or some kind, I think they did Dancing with the Stars, something like that, some kind of extra media work. And maybe they had some kind of film or a movie or something like that. And it never really worked out. They never really, blew up as big celebrities outside of the WWE, but they ended up doing this Total Divas TV show, which later spawned off the Total Bellas reality show. So I think they became quite a bit more prominent on the Total Divas thing. That became kind of its own entity, its own thing, at least for maybe the first season or first couple of seasons in around 2013 or 2014, something like that. And so the Bellas, their stock rose slowly but surely over the years. And definitely, dating main eventers, guys that became WWE champion, world champion in Daniel Bryan and John Cena. And so they had a solidified position in the roster. They became top females. They became top divas. They became the top women, at least for a little bit, in the WWE. And for a long time, I really wasn't a huge fan of them. The Bella Twins, I was like, they're really not that impressive. I wasn't impressed with their in-ring. I thought they looked great, obviously. They looked like models. There's a couple of beautiful chicks that had a kind of an exotic look, dark hair. I think they're part Mexican or something like that, part Hispanic, part Latin, whatever you want to call it. So they had that nice brunette, dark hair, very good-looking chicks. But as far as in the ring, and even like charisma-wise and mic skills-wise, they weren't that captivating. They were just kind of there for a long time. They just existed as a couple of hot chicks on the roster. But it wasn't until really just a couple of years ago, maybe around like 2016, something like that I kind of became a fan of them, at least to a certain degree, where I kind of appreciated them a little bit more. Their in-ring got a little bit better. They were doing dives, and they were doing they became better in-ring performers. They became better wrestlers, especially Nikki, I think. Nikki became a bit more impressive as a performer. And they started wearing better gear. Their clothing and their attire looked a little bit better. They looked more modernized chicks with I think one of them started wearing a plaid around the waist, kind of like the 90s revival of having that grungy look of having that plaid wrapped around the waist, a long sweater, grungy sweater wrapped around the waist. And I think Nikki started wearing a hat, a snapback hat. You know what I'm saying? So they both looked better. They looked hotter. They looked more refreshing, and they just had a better look as time went on. So I just became a fan. I kind of accepted them for who they were. They were kind of like reality stars, but kind of, and at the same time, like these hot, chicks that kind of became better in the ring, almost like a who was that chick from Candice Michelle from the mid-late 2000s. She was more like a model type at the beginning, and then she gradually became better and got better training and all that. She became better in the ring. She actually became a women's champion eventually because she became so improved back in the late 2000s. Unfortunately, she had to retire relatively early because she just kept getting injured and injured and injured. I mean, her body just basically failed her. And to be fair, she just botch after botch after botch. She just couldn't, when she's performing moves and she would land the wrong way, and it was just horrible for Candice as her career kind of ended. She got like cracked clavicle injuries, and it was just brutal, absolutely brutal. But the Bellas kind of remind me in a similar way, although I don't think they were ever. They never really suffered like super insanely crazy injuries. Although, I think they have been out because of health issues. I think one of them, and Nikki's, she stopped doing the rack attack. The first version of the rack attack was basically a a fireman's carry backbreaker kind of thing. But I think she ended up getting like neck issues or some kind of neck problems. And so she ended up doing a different version of the Rack Attack, the Rack Attack 2.0, which is basically just a a spinning kind of a cutter kind of move, a fireman's carry into a spinning cutter, which is actually a pretty cool move. I liked it. I kind of liked it as the TKO, So it's kind of like a variation of a TKO type of finishing move. But anyway, Brie Bella's kind of different because she kind of started stealing her husband's move, especially when Daniel stopped wrestling for a while, since 2014, and he basically retired from, he was forced into retirement for quite a few years there, between 14 to late 2018. So Brie Bella is the one that kind of picked up the Daniel Bryan moveset with the the different kinds of kicks and the kick combinations and the yes, yes, yes chants and all that. She kind of took that on and kind of applied his gimmick and applied his mannerisms. So that was kind of interesting, and that kind of got her over in a different way. Like, I think Nikki was more her own style of in-ring performer. Brie was more of a Daniel Bryan wannabe, and she so in some ways she was not as original, but she had her own charismatic kind of presence, her own thing going on. Like, I guess she's slightly more likable than Nikki, because Nikki is seen more as the the gold digging Cena girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, and then Brie Bella is the more slightly down to earth seemingly, although I think both of them are very similar anyway. They're both similar chicks, and you don't really know, like, they're probably a lot more similar than we give them credit for. They're probably a lot more comparable, but I kind of grew to like those couple of chicks, like the Bella Twins. I started to kind of dig them a little bit. They kind of grew on me after a while. I was like, I don't mind them. A couple of hot chicks that can kind of have some pretty all-right matches, and they look good. They brought some beauty into the roster, and they had at least they're kind of becoming bigger celebrities too, with the Total Divas thing, Total Bellas thing. So it was all right. I was kind of digging it. And even when the supposed breakup happened between Nikki and John, that kind of became like a mainstream news. Like, the mainstream news was talking about it. You could hear it in, kind of cross over into the tabloid news and all that. Cena and Nikki breaking up, the two stars of Total Divas or whatever. But Brie announcing her retirement, I think it's a long time coming. A lot of people, I think, wanted these two to retire. Not just Brie, but both Brie and Nikki to just stop wrestling, you know what I mean? Stop from in-ring competition because of the things like the Liv Morgan, accident. You know what I'm saying? She ended up basically putting her in a daze, knocking her loopy for a while, for maybe a couple of seconds, and unfortunately for Liv Morgan, she had to suffer these incredibly stiff kicks from Brie Bella in that particular match, and I think also Brie ended up stiffing Ruby Riott, in that match, so Brie is not exactly the safest individual. She's not the safest diva, and she's not even, obviously, she's far from considered one of the best female, divas, wrestlers of all time. Maybe Nikki might be considered in that just because of WWE canon. I think when it comes to WWE, the universe and the canon universe and all that, Nikki is in a higher position because she's accomplished more. I think she's one of the longest reigning female champions they had. I think she is the longest reigning Divas champion ever. She held that belt for over a year, a full year, something like that. Even longer than AJ Lee. I think that's what they wanted. They wanted Nikki to break AJ Lee's record because she was out and CM Punk and all that, and the WWE didn't want AJ to be the record holder anymore. Like, you're with CM Punk now. Well, forget you. We're gonna have our own. Nikki Bella completely. End your record. So with Brie though, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that the roster is a lot safer now. We don't have this incredibly risky individual. And from what I heard, Brie ended up going into a bit of a depression after the Liv Morgan incident. And look, Liv Morgan is a future star. I think she's going to be a future champion for this company, for the WWE. She's a very good-looking girl, young girl too, so she's got a future ahead of her. You know what I mean? There's definitely potential there. She could be the next, I don't know, a younger version of Alexa Bliss, or a younger version of the pretty blonde chick that gets attention from the casual fans. That good-looking, doll-like, very sexy kind of girl. So Liv Morgan has a future. Brie Bella has been around for like 11 years when she had that incident last year. She'd been around since like 2007. So with Brie, she's a long-term veteran. There's really no reason for Brie to still be promoted as a top wrestler. I mean, it's cool that she's a top star in Total Divas and all that, and she might get that casual, the ratings and all that. Maybe some women would check out WWE because she's on Total Divas or whatever. But it's like, there's no reason for them to be in the ring anymore. They've accomplished so much, and they've done so many things already. Nobody really wants them to continuously be wrestlers. I mean, the match last year with, I think it was Ronda and Nikki at Evolution, the Evolution pay-per-view, that was pretty cool. I mean, that was a cool match and everything. And I dig the fact that Nikki is willing to put over and make Ronda Rousey look good. That's cool. Both of them, both the Bella Twins. So they could they're still utilized in a relatively positive way. It's just that because there's so many women on the roster now, again, there's really no reason to have the Bella Twins completely, have main event matches and, have that spotlight on them. I get that they're total divas and total Bella's stars, but it's like, how much more can you give these women? They've done everything. You know what I mean? They if anything, like, I could see them putting the Bella Twins in movies. Why don't they put them in WWE films? Maybe they have done that. I just don't remember. But they could put them in movies instead. Put them, have them do some Hollywood stuff or something like that. I mean, that's fine. And I know that Brie Bella, I think she wants to just have, focus on her family. Focus on her family with Daniel Bryan and all that, and have a new kid, have a second child or something like that. And that's fine. It's just, being an in-ring competitor, I think that's long. That's a finished era. You know what I mean? You guys are kind of done with it. There's not really a huge clamor to see the Bella Twins. It would have been, I guess, it would have been cool a couple of years ago, or 3, 4, 5 years ago, if they had a women's tag division and a women's tag team belt. They could have won that. They could have dominated as a sister, twins, sibling tag team champions in the female division. That would have been cool to see, but I think too little too late. Now they got so many women on the roster now that have chemistry with each other and other younger, female wrestlers in the tag division, that as much as I enjoy the idea of having the Bella Twins as tag champs in their prime, let's say around, back in 2014, 2015, 2016, something like that, when they were, you could take them seriously as a female tag team. It's just, I think that era is kind of passed them by. It's kind of done. You know what I'm saying? Especially, again, with Brie Bella retiring, there's really no and I don't see Nikki. I mean, with Nikki, I guess maybe she could have a different tag team partner, but it just, not having Brie in there just kind of defeats the purpose, because that's the whole thing, is that it's supposed to be a tag team scenario. It's supposed to be, and that's what made it work, was the sister scenario, with the fact that it was Brie and Nikki, or Nikki and Brie, the Bella Twins. If Nikki doesn't decide to hang it up and she's still wrestling well into 2019, 2020 or whatever, and she could probably still keep going, because she's not like super old or anything like that, but if she wants to keep going, and she ends up getting a different partner, let's say somebody else on the roster, maybe Natty or somebody else, some other individual, maybe a younger star that she can mentor and guide as a tag partner, I guess that could work. It's just that, the Bella Twins as a tag team champion, female tag team champion, would have been pretty cool, but again, I think that era has passed them by. That potential has passed them by. So, overall, I'm just happy that, we're not putting youngsters with, youngsters like Liv Morgan in the ring anymore with people like Brie Bella. We don't see anybody getting KO'd again and getting a concussion, a potential concussion. That'd be pretty bad, and that's just a risk to the younger generation that's coming up right now. Again, I'm not, hating on the Bella Twins. I do find value in them. Very good looking chicks. You can put them on a magazine and stuff like that. And that's what I'd actually like to see more of. I'd like to see them do like magazine spreads or whatever. But again, it's like it's a finished era. The Bella Twins are done, and hopefully they just the fans don't come down too hard on them, because accidents do happen, and it is a part of the business. It is a part of professional wrestling that sometimes people do get knocked loopy, and somebody might get kicked or hit the wrong way when performing a move, when doing a certain move, like maybe a kick or a dive or something like that. I mean, they're just accidents. It's not like Brie Bella is, she's causing botches all the time, where she's constantly giving people concussions, or constantly KOing people, and constantly botching moves that's damaging and hurting the other female wrestlers on a consistent basis. Not really. That was a very rare occasion with Liv Morgan, and it was an accident. That's what it was, and it's sad, and it's sad the way that people came down so hard on her. Again, she's not like excluded from criticism. So many people targeted her. So many people came down really hard on her, and in some ways they are justified, because they're looking at this woman that they don't like to begin with. They don't like Brie Bella in the first place because she's like this reality star, Kim Kardashian type that's like, ugh, we don't even want to see this chick. I'm like, you know what? Accidents happen. It's, some people will get KO'd every now and then, because that's just the business. You know what I'm saying? People do get knocked loopy every now and then. So I'm kind of like in between. I don't want to... You want to criticize her in that you don't want to see it ever happen again, and you're happy that she's retiring, because now those chances are gone. She's not in the ring with these young women anymore that might get KO'd. But on the other hand, you don't want to like totally attack her and completely throw her under the bus and act like, well, she did it and she was completely at fault 100%. You know what I mean? Like, she's the one that you gotta blame and everything is her fault. And you know what I'm saying? I think that again, accidents happen. So that's my thoughts on the whole Liv Morgan thing. I know that happened many, many months ago, but I think that's a huge focus of... I think that's part of the reason why she's retiring. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's definitely one of the causes. I think that it affected her psychologically and emotionally when the Liv Morgan thing happened. Because it's like, oh my god, like, why am I still wrestling? Like, all these people can't stand me. I'm getting a lot of heat from the fans, and it's like, oh man, like, people don't want to see me anymore, and I'm not that good in the ring anyway, you know what I mean? And so I think she probably just wants to retire and just be away from in-ring competition. Like, just focus on your little family with Daniel Bryan, and that's it. You guys, I'm sure the Bella Twins are going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, no doubt about it. You know what I'm saying? They're Hall of Fame bound. They're one of the few women that lasted for well over a decade. Like, keep in mind, they've been around for like 10 years, 10, 11 years, maybe 12 years as part of developmental. So, on the main roster, I don't know how long they've been on the main roster. Maybe, about 10 years, a whole decade on the main roster. But, so they're going to be in the Hall of Fame someday as a sister, dual induction. The Bella Twins, Nikki and Brie. And that's going to be cool. It's probably going to happen relatively soon too, especially with Brie retiring. It wouldn't surprise me that they go in the Hall of Fame probably in the next couple of years, like, when they're in their late 30s, early 40s. See the other women that's been inducted, people like a Beth Phoenix or a Trish Stratus or a Lita, they're not that far off from that age, you know what I mean? That early 40s or late 30s age. They tend to induct women relatively quicker in the Hall of Fame because, they're younger, but they've accomplished more, and they leave. That's the thing with women too, is a lot of the female wrestlers, they end up leaving the business relatively quicker than the men because, injuries, focusing on families, that kind of thing. So divas, WWE divas and female wrestlers, they don't have longevity as much as the men. They might be in there for about 5 or 6 years, if that. People like a Trish or a Molly Holly or a Lita or Michelle McCool or something. You know, they're in and then they're gone after like five years or so. The Bellas are a little bit different. They've been there for, again, over a decade, in and out. You know, sometimes they'll be out for months, or sometimes it might even be out for almost like a year. But they kind of dip in and out of the company every now and then. They'll disappear, but then they come back. So that's it. That's my thoughts on Brie Bella retiring. This article is dope. Go check it out on, I think it's Pro Wrestling Sheet, although it's available in wrestling news all over, Google and all that. And that's my thoughts. Brie Bella's hot. She's accomplished a lot, but it's time to retire and leave it to the younger women on the current roster. That's it for this episode of the Review Space. Thank you guys for watching. Check out the rest of the channel for other wrestling topics, including Ronda Rousey's scathing rant about the scripted and fake WWE, and does Kofi Kingston deserve to be WWE Champion at WrestleMania 35, and who is the greatest wrestler of the 2010s decade. That's all uploaded on the channel. Click on the bell button for the latest notifications, and until next time, peace.